What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and I'm finally coming in with a long-awaited review. PowerColor versus MSI. We have two R9 270Xs, and we're going to see which brand deserves your money. So you might be wondering why I would even make this video, and honestly what the difference between these are. I get a lot of questions as to which graphics card they should choose on, like, should I get the one by Sapphire, should I get the one by evga, you know, the list goes on, zotac. And honestly, this is just to show you guys, I guess, two different brands, mostly less mainstream and more mainstream. We have the PowerColor R9 270X Devil Edition with the MSI 270X G2 Gaming Edition Twin Frozr cooling. So these are basically the higher end 270Xs for each company, and we're going to compare them together to see which one is better and overall if it even makes a difference, because honestly, for all we know, there might not be any difference at all. So we're going to go through basically some traits that these guys have in common. Now, the range of 270X graphics cards from all different manufacturers are all, for the most part, great graphics cards. This is definitely the very good price to performance range, best bang for your buck, budget building, but yet still getting some high-end graphical performance graphics cards. The 270X line of graphics cards are just unbeatable for the price. They really are, you guys, so keep that in mind when we're doing this. But, you know, they both have their differences, but they also both have a lot of things in common. For instance, their memory speed is at 5.6 gigahertz on both cards. They both have an effective memory clock of 1400 megahertz. You can have crossfire. They both have the aftermarket cooling solutions on them, so they both claim to be cooler and quieter. They are rocking 2 gigs of memory on a 256-bit memory bus. They both require two 6-pin connectors. They both have 180-watt TDP. They are dual slot cards. 1280 stream processors. They both have one HDMI and two DVI ports. They both have VRM, little mini VRM heat sinks on them for better temperatures and better overclocking, and they both roughly idle at about 30 degrees Celsius. So with all those in common, you guys might be wondering what it really is the difference, what is the point? But each card does have specific things for them. Though I will say this, though, between the two, most of the differences is going to be mostly for looks, honestly, and some cooling factors, as well as I don't know how to explain it, like little features that they may add into the cards, but those do not really affect performance whatsoever, believe it or not. But there are some differences. So the first line of differences we're going to go through, we're going to talk about the MSI Twin Frozr G2 Gaming Edition R9 270X. So overall, I mean, the aesthetics of this card is awesome. But let's kick it into the actual specs, things that actually mean stuff besides how it looks. So it's got a core clock of 1030 megahertz, a boost clock of 1120 megahertz, three 6mm aluminum heat pipes, and one, I believe it's an 8mm aluminum heat pipe. I'm not really too sure on the sizes, couldn't really find them. But there's basically three smaller heat pipes and one larger one. It's got a plastic shroud, two larger fans, and one display port. And it's got high C cap MOSFETs as well as solid cap capacitors. It actually runs cooler than the PowerColor under load, believe it or not. Though their idle temps are the same, under load this card is cooler. It's got a memory heat plate, basically a plate that covers all of the memory running along the whole side of the board, basically to keep those things in check. As well as I actually think that this even extends to the MOSFETs and everything, the power delivery as well. It also has a dual BIOS switch, or I think it's just a UEFI BIOS, but I still think that would consider as a dual BIOS more or less. So anyways, you guys, it's, you know, it's got some nice features on it, and it's a really good solid 270X card. I forgot actually to mention one other thing that these cards have in common is the price. They basically price at the exact same, around 180 bucks, give or take $10 to $20 depending on sales. But we did pay 180 for this one, and the PowerColor we actually only paid 120 for, and there was a mail-in rebate for $20, so about $100 for this one, and we paid 180 for the MSI one. So though I had a difference in price, For the most part, they run the same price on a regular basis, but on sales, this one seems to drop a lot lower during sales, the PowerColor Devil. So now we're going to move on to the PowerColor. So the PowerColor is definitely a longer card. The MSI one is shorter but wider, and this one is thinner but a lot longer, maybe like an inch and a half longer, actually, not too much. Anyways, you guys, this has a core clock of 1150 megahertz, a boost clock of 1180 with 4 6mm copper heat pipes. It has a full aluminum shroud, 3 fans. We have 2 smaller ones on the outside and 1 bigger one in the middle. It has 2 mini display ports instead of the single 1 display port that the MSI one has. So overall, this one could technically have more things plugged into it, though it may not support it. Also, as well, it's got a great looking backplate. The MSI one does not have a backplate. This R9 270X, because it is, PowerColor's higher model, it does have a great looking backplate. It's got some super capacitors on there, EMI shielding to prevent DVI signal interference, a digital PWM, multi-phase 7+1+1 power design. It actually runs hotter under load, but it's still very powerful graphics card. Another thing though I noticed about this one is there's no memory heat plate. There's no memory heat sinks at all on this one. The memory is simply cooled by the air, by the fan pushing air through the heat sink, and then basically just kind of passively cooling the RAM on this thing. So I kind of wish they would have included a RAM cooler on it, more or less like a little plate over it, or maybe some little mini heat sinks, but they did not. And that might be why this one shares the same memory clock as the MSI one, because this card's boost clock is significantly higher, more or less, or the core clock is. So that's basically the differences. The other differences, you guys, we're going to see them in the benchmarks. So we're going to hop into some benchmarks now and basically go through exactly what other stuff we can find inside of this this card versus that card, this company versus that company. Anyways, you guys, let's clock in those benchmarks. Alright, you guys, so up first in our long line of benchmarks, we have the Valley benchmark score. So I will be starting off with the MSI graphics card, and then I will be going to the PowerColor, and I will be doing that for all of the benchmarks, basically MSI first, then PowerColor next. Okay, so first we have our Unigine Valley benchmark score for the MSI graphics card at a max frame rate of 64, a minimum of 16.4, and an average of 34 with a score of 1423. And onto the PowerColor, we got 67.1 on the max, minimum of 18.7, and an average of 35.5 with a maximum score of 1486. Up next is Furmark. Now I want to say something with this test. I don't know if I necessarily trust these results. I was having a little trouble with this test with the PowerColor card. Basically, when I would run it, it would give me really nice frame rates, and it was, going up seemed normal, but it wasn't showing the maximum temperature. And then when I would run it, and get poorer frame rates, it would show the max temp. So I basically just took the one for the poorer frame rates and the lower score, just because it had the max temperature on there. The other one was saying completing it at like 36 max temps, 36 degrees Celsius, which I knew wasn't right, but it was averaging a frame rate of like 45. So it was beating the MSI one, but whenever it would factor in the temperature, for some reason it wouldn't. It would have lower frame rates. So I don't know what was wrong with that. So honestly, I'm just going to use basically the Furmark as only for factoring in the temperature. I'm going to list off the minimum maximum frame rates, but I'm not going to really pay attention to them as far as anything else. So for MSI, the maximum temperature was 65 degrees, which is really cool. This card will definitely have some overclocking headroom, and you know what I mean, that's a really low temp for a powerful card. Of course, it's got a lot lower clock, but that's still very nice, only 65 degrees. For the PowerColor, we had a max temperature of 76 degrees, so you know what I mean, about a 11 degree difference there, which can definitely be a decent difference between how much further you can overclock compared to one card. Of course, the PowerColor is already clocked a decent amount higher than the MSI card, but that temperature definitely gives it some room to catch up. So our maximum frame rates for the MSI card was at 44 with a minimum of 43 and an average of 42. Now with the PowerColor, we had a maximum of 39, a minimum of 32, and an average of 33. And that's what I'm saying. Usually when you run Furmark, I do this with my 280, and even in my roommate system, his MSI was going, or my brother's system, the PowerColor was going up a lot higher than this. Oh yeah, also for the benchmarks, I forgot to mention, you guys, I'm running on my system. I'm using an FX 8320 overclocked to 4.8 gigahertz for all of the test. So I pushed my CPU a little bit harder than I normally do to make sure that I could squeeze as much performance out of my CPU when using these two cards. So in 3D Mark Fire Strike test at 1080p, all of these tests are basically the 1080p presets or the 1080p maxed out depending on the game. If the frame rates are really low, then chances are it was maxed out. So just keep that in mind. For MSI, we had a score of 5636. And for PowerColor, we had a score of 5854, so about a 200 point gain in the 3D Mark Fire Strike bench test. Next, we're going to move on to Tomb Raider. We have the MSI with a minimum of 18.8, a maximum of 33.1, and an average of 25.6. Onto the PowerColor, we have a minimum of 20, a maximum of 34, and an average of 27. So a few frames a little bit higher on the PowerColor side there. So now we're going to move into the actual game testing. Woo woo! So I did include a handful of games. Some aren't as demanding as others, you know what I mean? I chose games on both ends of the spectrum. So first we have TitanFall, of course. On the MSI side, we are looking at 59.967 for the average, the minimum of 57 and a max of 62. And for the PowerColor, we have an average of 59.993 and a minimum of 55 and a max of 62. So they're basically within the margin of error of each other. The minimum frames a little bit lower on PowerColor, but like I said, it's within 3 frames is kind of margin of error. So next we're going to move on to Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2. This one was completely maxed out because it's an older game and honestly it doesn't take a lot to play it, but I wanted to pick some games that had some really ridiculously high frame rates so we could really see how bad the dips are between the cards. So for Left 4 Dead 2 we had an average of 191.633 with a minimum of 158 and a maximum of 227. And for the PowerColor Left 4 Dead 2, we have an average of 210.367 with a minimum of 168 and a maximum of 262. So as you guys can see, we're definitely getting some dips down here in Left 4 Dead 2 on both ends of the cards. Pretty substantial dips, yeah, on both ends of them. Honestly, they're about the same amount of dipping, just one gets a few more frames than the other one. So next is Minecraft. Once again, another game that we can get some ridiculous frame rates in. On MSI side for Minecraft, we have 228.5, a minimum of 109, and a max of 301. So Minecraft for PowerColor, we have 247.6 for the average, a minimum of 140, and a max of 336. Next is a little bit more of a demanding game. Start to work our way up there. We have DayZ. Now this was just on the standard presets. I didn't change any settings because I wanted, like I said, to just get something that I didn't have to go mess with settings between switching graphics cards. So we have the DayZ gameplay for MSI. We're at 40.667, minimum of 35, and a maximum of 48. So actually very playable frame rates on DayZ at 1080p. For the PowerColor side, we have 48.367 for the average, a minimum of 37, and a max of 53. So if you guys have noticed the pattern here, we're getting about anywhere from a 3 to 10 frame per second difference between each game. PowerColor +1, you know what I mean? So last but not least, of course, we have to do Crysis 3, you guys. This is where you'll definitely start to see a little bit more of a difference. So Crysis 3 with MSI, we have 33.667 for the average, minimum of 26, a maximum of 47, and then we go to Crysis 3 for PowerColor, and we have 40.567 for the average, a minimum of 29, and a max of 54. So definitely did a decent more of a jump for Crysis 3. So those are the benchmarks, you guys. Alright, you guys, so you've seen the scores, you've seen the benchmarks, you've seen the frame rates, and yes, the gameplay that was recorded on a mix between both cards, just depending on which one I felt recording at the time of playing the game. It's not like I switched recording between cards for each game, because honestly that's retarded. There was no frame counter in there really or anything, so it didn't really matter too much. But overall, you guys probably had the question of, okay, well, this is telling us that the PowerColor card is better than the MSI card. Well, that being out of the box, the PowerColor is getting some better performance than this card. But the MSI card is running a lot cooler. I mean, not even hitting 70 degrees Celsius. This card has some extremely high overclocking headroom as far as temps go. Granted, if this card was underclocked to this card, it probably would run the same. And if this card was overclocked to this card's megahertz, then it would probably run the same. So they're pretty even. So when it comes down to the question of, Steven, which 270X I should buy? Or Steven, which 780 should I get? Or Steven, which freaking 280 should I get? 290? Doesn't matter. My thing to tell you guys is they're all the same. They literally basically all the same. I've said it to a few people that have asked me questions, and I'll say it again. A 270X is a 270X. Doesn't matter where you get it from. Of course, they have little features, like if you want something like the UEFI BIOS, or a heat spreader along the RAM, or maybe an aluminum shroud or a tri-fan design. I like the longer graphics cards more than I like the fatter ones. If you want a backplate, you know, things like that. That's basically the difference between these. As well as, I guess you would count like this one having 2 mini display ports and this one only having 1 display port. So this one would be able to run 2 monitors at DisplayPort resolution, and this one would only be able to run 1 monitor, unless you want a DayZ chain or something. But either way, besides stuff like that, these graphics cards are pretty damn identical. Like I said, this one out of the box outperforms this one, and that is because this has got a higher core clock. Same memory clock though, I will say that. It's got a higher boost clock, and basically this is just a more overclocked version of the MSI one. So overall, they're the same damn thing. It really doesn't matter. Now, if you are a noob and you don't want to overclock your card, but you want the one with more performance, seeing how these cards run at the same price pretty regularly, the PowerColor is the way to go because it performs better out of the box. Now, if you're into overclocking and you're okay with overclocking, then you can go with the MSI one. You know what I mean? It's not going to make a difference. You can go with XFX. Doesn't matter. Go with whatever. Club 3D. Who cares? They're all basically the same. So I mean, I can't see this card overclocking too much more than it's already overclocked. This card I could see pushing probably a lot further than it is coming in at stock. It could probably get a lot higher than that. But overall, they're going to line up around the same within, you know, max 80 to 100 megahertz between each other. It's all in the silicone lottery. That's why I didn't bother overclocking them, because honestly, it's silicone lottery. I can't say that MSI is going to overclock better than PowerColor, because chances are you could get a shitty MSI card that can't overclock even to this stock speed that the PowerColor is set at. So overall, you guys, it's not going to matter which 270X you choose. Just pick the one that you like. What color it is, doesn't matter. They will perform about the same. Now, if you don't plan on overclocking ever, then get the one with the highest core clock, but it's not worth paying extra. I mean, if you think about it, I bought this card for about $125 out of pocket plus a $20 mail-in rebate, so $100 in total, and then I bought this card was $180. Okay, so we spent $60 difference between these two cards, and yeah, you know what I mean? There was just, yeah, $60 wasn't worth it. Even if this one outperforms this one, say this one was getting 5 frames per second more, we would be paying $60 for those 5 frames per second. That is ridiculous. That's not worth it. You know what I mean? It's not worth it. So find yourself a 270X by any reputable brand. I mean, Vision Tech, FXX, Club 3D, PowerColor, those work just fine. Don't even worry about them. Just go ahead with one of those. Grab yourself the cheapest 270X with a decent core clock, and you are good to go. Decent cooling solution and everything. But like I said, the most thing you're looking for is aesthetics. Honestly, if I had to choose for me, I would choose the PowerColor. It's got the nice Devil logo here. It's got an awesome backplate, and it's got an aluminum shroud. You know, what more could you want on a graphics card? It just looks cooler. Basically, I'd be just picking them off of looks. Honestly, that's what I'm saying. You guys, take it from me. It's not going to really make a difference. This mainly goes out to the guy that keeps asking me which 270X. I don't mind helping you out at all, bro. That's why I'm kind of making this video. But you keep asking me and sending me pictures of 270X, 270X. I can't understand how many times I'm going to tell you, man. A 270X is a 270X. Don't worry about it. Pick one that you think looks cool. If you don't care about looks, then pick one with the highest core clock. But overall, try and grab one of the cheaper ones. Don't pay, $50 extra for 5 frames per second. It's not worth it. But anyways, you guys, that's basically it. R9 270X pair up. Brand wise, doesn't matter. Out of the box, it does matter. I mean, like I said, 270X is a very beginner based card that will definitely get you some hardcore 1080p gaming. So if you are a beginner, you don't know how to overclock, you don't want to risk overclocking your graphics cards, go for the one with the highest core clock like this PowerColor Devil, and get the most performance out of the box. But if you don't mind overclocking, then honestly it's really not going to matter which graphics card you pick. So there you go, you guys. 270X, pick one. It doesn't matter. But anyways, you guys, as you can probably see, I haven't really promoted it, so I'm going to promote it on this video. I just made a Twitter. I've never even made a Twitter. I actually still have a lot of trouble figuring out how to use hashtags and the @ sign and all that stuff. I'm noob in one ear, out the other. So come support me on Twitter, you guys. I do tweet, and I'll tweet a lot more if I had more followers. I don't really have a lot, so, come follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm definitely working on more and more content. You got to remember, everything I review comes out of my pocket, so, I mean, just for this review, we're looking at like $300 alone. So, anyways, you guys, yeah, come support me. Show your love in the channel. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Do all that good stuff. Leave me a comment. Leave me a negative comment. Go for it, man. Was anything else I wanted to mention? I don't really think there was much else I wanted to mention. I don't know. Have a good weekend, guys.